"Felix, tell me the truth. Did you really say that about me?" The question cut through the silence like shattered glass. The practice room, usually filled with laughter and music, felt suffocating. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Rain hammered against the windows, blurring the city outside into streaks of silver and gray. Standing in the center of the room, Hyunjin stared at Felix with eyes filled not with anger, but something far worse, hurt. Felix froze. A phone lay abandoned on the floor between them. On its screen was a screenshot, a message, a rumor, a betrayal. At least that was what it looked like. For a long moment neither of them moved. Felix's heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear the rain. "I never said that," he whispered. But the damage had already begun. The screenshot had appeared online only 3 hours earlier. According to the message, Felix had been secretly complaining about Hyunjin for months. The words painted a cruel picture of jealousy, resentment, and frustration. Whoever had written them knew exactly which insecurities would hurt Hyunjin the most. The internet exploded, fans argued, speculation spread, and before either of them could understand what was happening, doubt had already entered the room. Hyunjin looked away first. That small gesture hurt Felix more than any accusation, because Hyunjin had always looked at him directly, always, ever since their trainee days. Back when they were just two teenagers chasing impossible dreams, back when success felt far away and friendship was all they had, Felix remembered the first time Hyunjin had stayed behind after practice to help him. Everyone else had gone home. His pronunciation had been terrible, his confidence even worse. Yet Hyunjin had sat beside him until midnight, repeating lines over and over again. Neither of them had known then how important that moment would become. Years later, that memory remained one of Felix's most treasured secrets, and now suddenly it felt fragile, as if someone had reached into the past and poisoned it. "I don't know where that screenshot came from," Felix said. Hyunjin remained silent. The silence felt endless. Finally, he spoke. "Then why does it sound like something only you would know?" Felix felt the air leave his lungs, because Hyunjin was right. The message mentioned private conversations, private fears, private moments. Things only a handful of people knew, things Felix knew, things Hyunjin had trusted him with. For the first time, Felix couldn't find an answer. The uncertainty frightened him, not because he doubted himself, because he could see doubt growing inside Hyunjin, and that was something far more dangerous. Without another word, Hyunjin picked up his jacket. The zipper's metallic sound echoed through the room. Then he walked away. The door closed. Felix stood alone. The room suddenly felt enormous, cold, empty. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. For the next few days, everything changed, not dramatically, not publicly. The worst changes rarely were. Instead, they appeared in small moments, moments nobody else noticed. The empty seat beside Felix during lunch, the conversations that ended when he approached, the way Hyunjin smiled politely now instead of naturally, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he always seemed somewhere else. Felix hated it, more than the rumors, more than the online speculation. Because strangers had never mattered, Hyunjin did. Every day, Felix searched for opportunities to talk. Every day, something interrupted. A schedule, a meeting, an event, or simply distance. Distance that grew larger with every passing hour. At night, Felix stopped sleeping properly. He would sit by the dormitory window staring at the city lights. The glow of passing cars reflected in his eyes. Questions filled his mind. Who created the screenshot? Why target them? Why now? And most importantly, did the message contain details that should have been impossible to know? One evening, while scrolling through countless online posts, Felix noticed something strange, a username. It appeared repeatedly beneath rumor-related discussions, always encouraging arguments, always adding fuel to the fire, always present before new information leaked. The account had no profile picture, no personal information, nothing, just a single symbol, a black butterfly. Felix's stomach tightened. Something felt wrong, very wrong. He clicked through dozens of posts. The deeper he looked, the more patterns emerged. The account wasn't reacting to rumors, it was getting them, manipulating conversations, creating narratives, steering people towards specific conclusions, as though someone were conducting an orchestra made of suspicion. A chill crawled down his spine. Whoever was behind this wasn't acting randomly, they had a plan, and Hyunjin was at the center of it. The next morning, Felix gathered every screenshot he could find, every post, every timestamp, every clue. Then he headed toward the studio. For the first time in days, determination replaced fear. He needed Hyunjin to listen, needed him to understand, needed him to remember who they were. When he arrived, the hallway was quiet. The scent of coffee lingered in the air. Music leaked faintly through a closed door. Felix took a deep breath and stepped inside. Hyunjin was there, alone, writing something in a notebook. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt familiar this time. Not comfortable, but familiar. Can I show you something? Felix asked. Hyunjin hesitated, then nodded. Felix placed the evidence on the table slowly, carefully. He explained everything: the account, the timing, the suspicious activity, the patterns. At first, Hyunjin listened with skepticism, then curiosity, then concern. The more he examined the evidence, the more his expression changed. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. And for the first time since the rumor appeared, Felix saw genuine uncertainty in him. Not uncertainty about Felix, uncertainty about everything else. Finally, Hyunjin looked up. What if you're right? Felix swallowed. Then someone wants us to stop trusting each other. The room fell silent again, but this silence felt different, not like a wall, like a bridge under construction. Hyunjin stared at the photographs spread across the table. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Far away, thunder echoed across the city once more. Then, after what felt like forever, Hyunjin spoke quietly. You know what's strange? What? The day before the rumors appeared, someone asked me a very specific question. Felix frowned. What question? Hyunjin's expression darkened. Someone asked whether I would still stay beside you if I discovered a secret. A cold shiver ran through Felix. Neither of them spoke, because suddenly the rumors felt much larger than a fake screenshot. Much larger than online gossip. Someone wasn't merely spreading lies. Someone was testing them, studying them, waiting for them to break. Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning illuminated the city skyline, and somewhere beyond the rain-covered windows, hidden behind anonymous accounts and carefully constructed rumors, a mysterious figure watched events unfold exactly as planned. Neither Hyunjin nor Felix knew it yet, but the truth behind the rumor was connected to a secret buried years ago, a secret powerful enough to destroy friendships, careers, and trust itself. And the closer they moved toward that truth, the more dangerous the journey would become. The rain continued long after midnight. Inside the studio, the world seemed smaller than usual. The distant sounds of traffic faded beneath the steady rhythm of water striking the windows. The city lights shimmered across the glass, turning the room into a landscape of shadows and reflections. Felix sat opposite Hyunjin, both of them surrounded by scattered screenshots and notes. Neither had expected the evening to last this long. Neither had expected to find themselves investigating a mystery together. Yet somehow, after days of distance and uncertainty, they were finally talking again, not as performers, not as public figures, as friends, and that made every discovery feel personal. Hyunjin leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Tell me everything you found. Felix nodded. There were 3 major leaks. He pointed toward the first screenshot, fake messages, then another, rehearsal schedule that somehow got published before management announced it. Finally, a 3rd image, and these private photos. Hyunjin frowned. The photographs had never been released publicly. They showed moments from nearly 2 years ago, ordinary moments, conversations backstage, meals shared after exhausting performances, pictures that should have remained hidden. What do all 3 have in common? Hyunjin asked. Felix hesitated. Access. Answer hung heavily in the air. Only someone close enough could have obtained that information. Not necessarily a friend, but someone nearby, someone who understood their routines. Someone who had been watching for a very long time. The realization sent a chill through both of them. Hyunjin looked toward the rain-covered window. For days he had convinced himself that the problem was trust, that perhaps friendship had changed, that perhaps success had altered things, but now another possibility emerged. What if neither of them had betrayed the other? What if someone wanted them to believe they had? His stomach tightened. The thought was unsettling. Because manipulation was often more dangerous than direct hostility. A liar attacked openly. A manipulator turned allies against each other, and whoever orchestrated these rumors appeared skilled at exactly that. The clock on the wall showed 1:17 a.m. Neither had noticed how late it had become. The building was almost empty. Only the occasional sound of footsteps echoed through distant hallways. Then Felix's phone vibrated. Both of them looked down immediately. A new notification appeared. Unknown sender. No profile picture, no name, just a message. Felix opened it. The color drained from his face. Hyunjin immediately stood. What is it? For several seconds, Felix couldn't answer. Then he slowly turned the screen toward him. A photograph filled the display. It showed the 2 of them years ago during their trainee period, sitting alone on a rooftop after practice. The image should not have existed. Neither of them remembered anyone taking it. Beneath the photograph was a single sentence. You are looking in the wrong direction. The room fell silent. A strange feeling settled over them. Not fear, not yet something colder. The sensation of being watched. Hyunjin immediately looked around. The studio remained empty. The hallway beyond the door was dark. No movement, no sound, nothing. Yet the message felt deliberate, calculated, as though someone wanted them to know they were being observed. Felix checked the sender information. Nothing, no trace. The account disappeared seconds later, deleted, gone. As if it had never existed, for several moments neither spoke. The photograph remained on the screen, frozen in time, two younger versions of themselves smiling beneath the night sky. A memory neither had thought about in years. Finally, Hyunjin broke the silence. That rooftop. Felix looked up. What about it? I only went there once. Felix nodded. So did I. Their eyes met. Understanding arrived instantly. The rooftop had never been a public place. Very few people knew about it. Even fewer knew they had been there together. Someone had access to memories that should have remained private. And suddenly the mystery became far more disturbing. The next day, exhaustion followed them everywhere. Meetings blurred together. Conversations felt distant. Their minds remained focused on the photograph, the message, the unknown sender. Every clue seemed connected to the past. And the deeper they searched, the more often the same question appeared. Who knew so much about them? That evening, while reviewing old files stored on an external drive, Felix discovered something unexpected. A folder, hidden beneath dozens of archived documents. The folder had no title, only a date. Curious, he opened it. Inside were photographs, hundreds of them, training sessions, practice rooms, hallways, events, years of memories. Most appeared harmless. But as Felix continued scrolling, his heartbeat quickened. Many photographs had been taken from unusual angles, from distances, from places where nobody should have been standing. It felt less like a collection of memories and more like surveillance. The realization made his skin crawl. Immediately he called Hyunjin. 20 minutes later they sat together again. The room felt colder than before. Hyunjin carefully examined each image. His expression grew darker with every photograph. Someone collected all of this? Felix nodded. For years. They liked the implication. This wasn't a sudden attack. It wasn't an impulsive act. Whoever was behind the rumors had been gathering information for a very long time, patiently, quietly waiting. The question was why. As Hyunjin continued scrolling, he suddenly stopped. His eyes widened. What is it? He pointed at the screen. Near the edge of one photograph stood a blurry figure, barely visible, almost hidden. A person wearing a dark jacket, their face obscured. At first glance it seemed insignificant. But the same figure appeared again, and again, and again, across photographs taken years apart, always distant, always watching, never interacting. Felix felt a knot tighten inside his chest. Do you think it's the same person? Hyunjin nodded slowly. I do. The room became eerily quiet. Outside, evening darkness settled across the city. Streetlights flickered to life. Their golden reflections stretched across rain-soaked roads. Meanwhile, inside the studio, another realization emerged. The rumors. The screenshots, the hidden photographs, the anonymous messages, none of these were random. Someone had been following their story for years, and now that person had finally stepped out of the shadows, not completely, but enough to make their presence known. Enough to remind Hyunjin and Felix that they were no longer investigating a mystery. They had become part of it. For the first time since the rumors began, fear found a place inside Felix's heart. Not fear for himself, fear for what might happen if the truth turned out to be worse than they imagined, because some secrets stayed buried for a reason. And every step they took toward uncovering this one seemed to bring them closer to something waiting in the darkness.
The following morning arrived beneath a sky covered with thick grey clouds. Neither Felix nor Hyunjin had slept much. The photographs remained spread across the table exactly where they had left them the night before. Every image seemed different now. What once looked like ordinary memories had transformed into evidence that someone had been watching. For years, Felix stood near the window, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hands. His thoughts kept returning to the same blurry figure. The dark jacket, the hidden face, the impossible consistency. Whoever it was had appeared throughout multiple stages of their lives, not once, not twice, dozens of times, and somehow nobody had noticed. A quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. Hyunjin entered carrying a folder. His expression looked unusually serious. I found something. Felix immediately turned around. What is it? Hyunjin placed the folder on the table. Inside were old schedules, travel records, event attendance lists. Documents they had managed to obtain from years ago. I compared dates. Felix frowned. Compared them to what? The photographs. Silence settled over the room. Hyunjin opened one of the documents. There are hundreds of people who crossed paths with us over the years. He flipped another page, managers, another page, staff members, another, security personnel. Then he stopped. But only one name appears every single time. Felix felt his pulse quicken. The room suddenly seemed much smaller. Hyunjin slowly pointed toward a highlighted section. A former event coordinator, someone who had worked briefly with multiple teams years ago, someone who had quietly disappeared from the industry shortly afterward. The name meant nothing to Felix. He searched his memory, nothing, no face, no conversation, no recollection at all. Yet according to the records, this person had been present during many important moments. Far too many. Do you think it's him? Felix asked. Hyunjin shook his head. I don't know. Uncertainty bothered him, because answers usually brought relief. This discovery only created more questions. Why would an event coordinator collect photographs? Why spend years watching them? Why suddenly release rumors now? Nothing made sense. A strange tension lingered between them as they continued examining records. Hours passed. The rain outside returned, soft at first, then heavier. The sound filled the room like distant static. Finally, Felix leaned back and sighed. We are missing something, Hyunjin nodded. I know. Evidence pointed in a direction, but it still failed to explain motive, and motive mattered. Without it, everything remained incomplete. As evening approached, they decided to visit an old storage facility where archived event materials were kept. The building stood on the edge of the city, large, agging, almost forgotten. The kind of place people passed every day without noticing. By the time they arrived, twilight had settled over the streets. The parking lot was nearly empty. A cold wind moved through the air. The building's exterior lights flickered weakly. For a moment, Felix felt uneasy, not because of the place itself, because of the feeling that someone might already know they were coming. They entered through a side door. The interior smelled of dust and old paper. Rows upon rows of shelves stretched into the darkness. Boxes filled with years of records occupied every corner. Their footsteps echoed softly. The silence felt unnatural, almost oppressive. Together, they searched through archived materials connected to past events. Hours passed, nothing. Then, just as frustration began taking hold, Hyunjin stopped. Felix. His voice was barely above a whisper. Felix turned immediately. What? Hyunjin held up a small notebook, old, worn, its cover damaged by time. There was no name written on it, no label, nothing. Carefully, they opened it. Inside were handwritten notes, dates, locations, observations. At first, they appeared random, then patterns emerged. The entries focused almost entirely on one subject, them, not their performances, not their careers, their friendship. Felix's hands trembled slightly as he turned another page. The writer described conversations, moments, expressions, arguments, reconciliations, tiny details no stranger should have noticed. A cold sensation spread through his chest. This wasn't normal curiosity, it was obsession, years of obsession. Page after page revealed increasingly personal observations. The writer seemed fascinated by the bond between Hyunjin and Felix, almost fixated on it. One sentence appeared repeatedly throughout the notebook. Their friendship is stronger than expected. Again and again and again, like a frustrated conclusion. Hyunjin stared at the words. Something about them felt unsettling. Not because of what they said, because of what they implied. Someone had been waiting for their friendship to fail, waiting, watching, studying, and apparently growing disappointed every time it survived. The realization left both of them speechless. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The old building creaked softly. For the first time, the mystery felt deeply personal, not an attack on their reputations, an attack on their connection itself. Then Felix noticed something tucked between two pages, a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Carefully, he unfolded it. Both of them froze. It was a photograph, not a surveillance image, not a hidden snapshot, an ordinary picture, taken many years ago. But neither of them appeared in it. Instead, the photograph showed a young person standing alone beneath a tree. Smiling, on the back, a short sentence had been written in faded ink. Everything changed because of them. Neither Hyunjin nor Felix recognized the person, yet something about the message felt significant, important, as though this unknown individual represented the missing piece, the connection they had been searching for, the reason behind everything. For several moments, they simply stared at the photograph. Trying to understand, trying to remember, trying to find meaning. Then a sudden sound echoed through the storage facility, a metallic crash, loud, unexpected, somewhere deeper inside the building. Both of them looked up instantly. Silence followed, then another noise, closer this time, footsteps, slow, deliberate. The hairs on Felix's arms stood up, someone else was inside. And judging from the timing, it was impossible to believe it was a coincidence. The footsteps continued, measured, unhurried. Though whoever was approaching already knew exactly where they were. Hyunjin exchanged a glance with Felix, neither needed to speak. The same thought had entered both of their minds. After years hidden in the shadows, the person connected to the mystery might finally be closer than ever before. And for the first time, the truth no longer felt distant. It felt frighteningly near. The footsteps echoed through the storage facility, slow, steady, unmistakable. Felix instinctively tightened his grip on the old notebook. His heartbeat pounded against his ribs as he listened. Another step, then another. The sound traveled through the maze of shelves and towering stacks of boxes. Whoever was there wasn't trying to hide. That realization felt more unsettling than if they had. Hyunjin carefully lowered the photograph onto the table. The dusty air seemed heavier now, neither moved, neither spoke. The footsteps stopped, silence returned. A silence so complete that Felix could hear the faint hum of the building's agging electrical system. Then a door slammed somewhere in the distance. The sudden noise made both of them flinch. "Did you see anyone when we came in?" Felix whispered. Hyunjin shook his head. "No." Answer did little to ease the tension. For several moments they remained perfectly still, waiting, listening, but no further sounds came. Eventually, Hyunjin exhaled slowly. "We should leave," Felix agreed. Whatever answers they were searching for could wait. The feeling of being watched had returned stronger than ever. Carefully, they packed the notebook and photograph into a bag before heading toward the exit. The journey through the endless rows of shelves felt longer now. Every shadow seemed suspicious. Every creak sounded amplified. The overhead lights flickered occasionally, bathing the aisles in brief moments of darkness. When they finally reached the parking lot, both felt immediate relief. Fresh air, open space, no more suffocating silence. Rain had stopped. The streets glistened beneath the glow of streetlights. For a while, neither spoke. They simply sat inside the car, processing everything they had discovered. The notebook, the photographs, the mysterious person in the picture, and the sentence written on the back. Everything changed because of them. The words refused to leave Felix's mind. "Do you think the person in the photograph is connected to the rumors?" he finally asked. Hyunjin stared out the window. "I think they're connected to all of it." Felix frowned. "Why?" Hyunjin was quiet for several seconds. "Because whoever wrote that notebook wasn't interested in destroying us." He looked toward Felix. "They were interested in understanding us. Distinction mattered. Destroying someone was simple. Studying them for years required something deeper, something more personal. And somehow that possibility felt even more disturbing. The drive back to the city passed in thoughtful silence. Streetlights blurred across rain-soaked roads. Buildings drifted by like silent giants. Both were exhausted, yet neither could stop thinking. Pieces of a puzzle surrounded them, but the final image remained hidden. When they arrived back at the dormitory, the clock was approaching midnight. Most lights were already off. The building felt unusually quiet. Felix headed toward his room, eager for sleep, but just as he reached his door, something caught his eye, an envelope resting neatly on the floor. His name was written across the front. No stamp, no return address, nothing. A cold sensation spread through his chest. Slowly, he picked it up. The paper felt dry despite the humid night air. Almost as if it had been placed there moments earlier. Hyunjin noticed immediately. "What is that?" "I don't know." Together they entered the room. The envelope sat on the desk between them. Neither touched it for several seconds. Finally, Felix opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded carefully. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded it. The message contained only one sentence: "You have forgotten the promise." Both stared at the words. Confusion immediately replaced fear. What promise? Felix asked. Hyunjin looked equally puzzled. "Have no idea." They turned the paper over. Nothing. No signature, no explanation, just that one sentence: "You have forgotten the promise." For the next hour they searched their memories, childhood, training years, old conversations. Nothing seemed to fit. Neither could remember any promise important enough to inspire years of surveillance and manipulation. Eventually, exhaustion forced them to stop, but sleep proved impossible. Felix lay awake staring at the ceiling. The envelope rested on his desk nearby. Moonlight filtered through the curtains. The room remained silent except for the occasional sound of distant traffic. His thoughts drifted toward the past, toward memories he hadn't revisited in years. Training rooms, long nights, shared dreams, moments of failure, moments of triumph. Then suddenly a memory surfaced, small, incomplete, yet strangely vivid. A summer evening years ago, a rooftop, warm wind, city lights stretching endlessly below. Felix sitting beside Hyunjin and someone else, a third person. The memory vanished almost immediately, like smoke slipping through his fingers. Felix sat upright, his heart raced. Someone else had been there. He was sure of it, not a stranger, someone they knew, someone important. But no matter how hard he tried, the face remained hidden behind the fog of time. The next morning he rushed to find Hyunjin. To his surprise, Hyunjin looked equally unsettled. Before Felix could speak, Hyunjin said something that made him freeze. "I remembered something last night." Felix stared. "What?" Hyunjin hesitated, then slowly answered. "Rooftop, the same memory, the same forgotten night." Felix's pulse quickened. "You remembered it too?" Hyunjin nodded. "There was another person with us." Silence filled the room. Both understood the significance immediately. For years they had remembered that evening as a private conversation between friends. But now another figure had emerged from the shadows of memory, a person neither could clearly identify, yet somehow that person felt important, essential, like the missing piece of a puzzle hidden in plain sight. Hyunjin sat down heavily. His expression had become distant. Maybe that's who the photograph is showing. Felix considered the possibility. The age seemed right, the timeline matched, and if the mysterious individual truly connected everything together, then perhaps the answer had been buried in their memories all along, not hidden by someone else, hidden by time. For the rest of the day they searched through old photos, videos, and archives. Hours passed. Then finally, just before sunset, Felix discovered something, an old recording, nearly forgotten, stored inside a backup folder. The video quality was poor, the audio crackled, but it clearly showed the rooftop. Hyunjin appeared, Felix appeared, and standing beside them, a third person. Both of them froze. The figure turned toward the camera. For the first time, the hidden face became visible. And the moment Felix recognized who it was, the world seemed to stop, because it was someone they had once trusted completely, someone they believed had disappeared from their lives years ago. someone neither of them had spoken about in a very long time. And suddenly, every rumor, every photograph, every message, and every mystery began pointing toward the same forgotten name.
The room fell silent. Felix and Hyunjin stared at the paused video, unable to look away. The face on the screen belonged to someone they had once considered family. A former trainee named Minyu, not the famous performer everyone knew, but a young man who had trained alongside them years before debut. Someone who had laughed with them, shared meals with them, and dreamed beside them. Someone who had suddenly disappeared. For years, neither Felix nor Hyunjin had spoken about him. Not because they wanted to forget, because remembering hurt. Back then, all three of them had spent countless nights together on that rooftop. Whenever training became overwhelming, they would escape there and talk about the future. On one particular evening, they had made a promise they thought they would never break. No matter where life took them, no matter who succeeded or failed, no matter how much fame changed their lives, they would never abandon one another. Watching the old video, Felix finally remembered. The promise, the mysterious message, everything suddenly made sense. Months later, Minyu had been forced to leave training due to personal circumstances. It happened quickly. Before either Felix or Hyunjin fully understood what was happening, he was gone. At first they tried contacting him. Then schedules became busier, life moved faster, years passed. The distance grew, not intentionally, simply because life kept moving forward. But from Minyu's perspective, things looked different. While Felix and Hyunjin achieved their dreams, he remained behind, alone, forgotten. At least that was how he saw it. The notebook, the photographs, and the messages had all been created by someone who never truly stopped looking back. Someone trapped in old memories. Someone unable to let go. After weeks of searching, they finally located him. He was living quietly in a small town far from the spotlight. The meeting took place on a cloudy afternoon. No cameras, no reporters, no audience. Just three people carrying years of unfinished emotions. When Minyu arrived, he looked older than they remembered. Not because of age, because of disappointment. For several moments nobody spoke. The wind rustled through nearby trees, clouds drifted slowly across the sky. Finally, Minyu broke the silence. "You remembered." His voice sounded calm, tired. Felix felt guilt tighten inside his chest. "We never forgot you." A faint smile appeared on Minyu's face, but sadness lingered in his eyes. Maybe not completely. Conversation that followed lasted hours. There were no dramatic accusations, no shouting. No revenge, only honesty. For the first time in years, all three spoke openly about the pain they had buried. Minyu admitted creating the anonymous messages, not because he hated them, because he wanted to know whether their friendship was real, whether the bond he once admired could survive betrayal, whether the promise they made had meant anything at all. It had started as a test, then gradually transformed into an obsession. Years of loneliness had twisted his perspective. The more he watched them, the more distant he felt. And eventually, he convinced himself that exposing cracks in their friendship would somehow validate his own pain. But instead, he discovered something unexpected. The rumors hurt them. The lies created doubt. Yet in the end, Felix and Hyunjin chose trust over suspicion, again and again. The very thing Minyu had been trying to challenge became the thing that defeated his plan. As evening approached, the tension slowly faded. Not all wounds healed instantly, some never fully disappeared. But understanding replaced resentment. And understanding was a beginning. Before leaving, Minyu handed Felix the old notebook. "I don't need it anymore." Felix accepted it carefully. Years of obsession rested within those pages, years that could never be recovered. Yet perhaps they no longer needed to be. The sun emerged briefly from behind the clouds. Warm golden light illuminated the field around them. For the first time in a long while, silence felt peaceful. Months passed. The rumors eventually disappeared. Online discussions moved on. New stories replaced old ones. The mystery that once threatened to destroy everything quietly faded into the background. But some things remained. Felix framed the rooftop photograph and kept it in a private corner of his room, not as a reminder of betrayal, as a reminder of friendship, of how fragile it could be, and how valuable it was when protected. Hyunjin often found himself thinking about that lesson as well. Trust was not something built in a single day. It was built through countless choices, through misunderstandings, through forgiveness, through difficult conversations, and through the decision to stay when walking away would be easier. One evening, nearly a year later, Felix and Hyunjin returned to the rooftop from their trainee days. The city stretched endlessly before them. Lights sparkled like stars across the horizon. The wind carried familiar scents of rain and distant traffic. For a while they simply stood there, remembering, reflecting, smiling. Do you think friendships can survive anything? Felix asked quietly. Hyunjin looked toward the city, then smiled. No, Felix raised an eyebrow. No, Hyunjin shook his head. Anything. A gentle breeze moved through the night. But the real ones survive more than people expect. Felix laughed softly. For the first time in a very long time, there was no mystery left to solve. No shadows watching from afar. No hidden messages. Only friendship, older now, stronger now, tested by doubt, distance, and pain, yet still standing. As the city lights shimmered beneath the night sky, both understood something important. The rumors had not revealed the weakness of their friendship. They had revealed its strength. And somewhere in the quiet darkness beyond the rooftop, the echoes of old promises finally found peace. The end.